Barakata Yahweh, Barakata Yahabushai, Bahasham, Rakahakodash, Barakatum. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, glory, and infinite honors to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahabushai. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule and teach well. In peace and salutations to you sincere Akim out there, pushing this word in truth and sincerity to the four corners of the globe. May you brothers endure until the end. This is the brother Ra'aya with another video, and I'm going to start it off in Revelation chapter 17, verse 16. And the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, the 10 horns speaking of the European Union, beginning with the first 10 common markets back when it was known as the European Economic Community, and the beast is NATO. These shall hate the whore, the United States of America, which is biblically known as Babylon the Great, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire, nuclear fire, because during World War III, which will come to pass, as it says in Revelation chapter 9, verse 12, one woe is past, and behold, there come 2 woes more hereafter. America's allies are going to turn against her and ally themselves with Russia, and they're all together going to shoot 200 million nuclear missiles onto the United States of America, turning it into the biblical lake of fire from sea to shining sea, and then a desolate, uninhabitable wasteland afterwards. This is Jeremiah chapter 50, verse 9. For lo, I will raise and cause to come up against Babylon, the United States of America, an assembly of great nations from the north country, and the north country is speaking of Russia. And besides being known as the North Country in Jeremiah chapter 50, verse 9, Russia is also known as Gog in Ezekiel chapter 38, and the spiritual Medes in Isaiah chapter 13, verse 17. And the reason Russia is known as the North Country is because what's north of the United States of America? You've got Canada, the Arctic Ocean region, and then Russia. And it's a well-known fact that Russia shooting its missiles from itself and from military installations in the Arctic Ocean region, which they've been building up over the past couple of years to hit its targets in the United States of America, would be the shortest trajectory time for those missiles to take to hit the United States of America. And those assembly of great nations are not only Russia's allies, like China, Iran, and North Korea, but also the allies of the United States of America, the 10 horns upon the beast, such as Britain, France, Germany, these other NATO nations, etc., that are again going to turn against the United States of America during this upcoming Third World War and ally themselves with that North Country, Russia, to altogether shoot those 200 million nuclear missiles onto America. And they shall set themselves in array against her. From thence she shall be taken. Their arrows shall be as of a mighty expert man. None shall return in vain. And those arrows are symbolic for those nuclear missiles, because what you have to remember is that when the prophets saw these visions thousands of years ago, they didn't know what a modern day nuclear missile was, so they described it the best way they could with what they knew during their times. Ancient weapons of war like bows and arrows, spears, javelins, flying swords, etc., etc. And the reason I opened up this video with these 2 verses is to preface a clip from RT America's YouTube channel titled Russian Military Warns of Response If NATO Trespasses. And as we'll see in this clip, recently there was a little spat between Britain and Russia in the Black Sea, where Russia fired warning shots at Britain, and it's all playing into bigger military drills going on around the Black Sea and the Ukraine, with NATO positioning themselves and training for a possible conflict with Russia. But as we just read from those verses, these nations in NATO are going to eventually turn against the United States of America during this upcoming Third World War and ally themselves with Russia. So whenever you see information like this, just know that when everything's said and done, America's allies are going to turn against her and ally themselves with Russia. But now let's play this clip.
Conflicting reports of an alleged bomb or explosives dropped in the Black Sea in the path of a UK Navy destroyer by Russia. The Russians say they dropped kinetic deterrents near the Royal HMS Defender after the Royal Navy ignored Russian warnings that they were trespassing in Russian territorial waters as the ship sailed off the coast off Crimea ahead of some NATO exercises with Ukraine. Now, meanwhile, the British just deny any of this even happened, just flatly, point blank. This is the first time since the Cold War that Russia has used a hot weapon against Western intervention. So is this NATO provocation, or is this simply a dispute over Crimea exiting Ukraine and joining the Russian Federation? So for analysis, former Pentagon official Mike Maloof will join us. So Mike, the big question here is, could there be a threat of kinetic war between Russia and NATO?
Yes, I think there can be, and Mr. Putin has basically said that Crimea is a red line. Ukraine is a red line.
And real quick, at the beginning of World War III, these NATO nations will be on the side of the United States of America, fighting against Russia and its allies in that Middle Eastern region during the battle in the Valley of Jehoshaphat, the War of Armageddon, because that's the main place where World War III is going to take place. But like I've been saying throughout this video, during World War III, America's allies will turn against her and ally themselves with Russia and her allies to altogether shoot their nuclear missiles onto the United States of America.
In terms of any kind of NATO effort to try to bring Ukraine into the Atlantic Alliance. But it's more than that. This is really an effort by NATO really to make the Black Sea a NATO sea. And when you look at who already is surrounding the Black Sea, Moldova, Romania, Bulgaria, Turkey. I mean, these are members of NATO, and then you have two wannabes, Ukraine and Georgia. That would then solidify NATO as a NATO Black Sea effort, all in an effort to contain Russia.
Yeah, and NATO and the West know that Russia has laid claim to Crimea since 2014. Why would they conduct those exercises there? And any coincidence that Russia would be unveiling and testing new hypersonic mobile ICBMs right now?
Well, the reason is that the West does not recognize the annexation of Crimea by Russia. In fact, there was a referendum in Crimea that said they predominantly wanted to go with Russia, and that's what occurred. As I understand it, it even caught Mr. Putin off guard when people voted the way they did to want to be annexed to Russia. That said, the international community does not recognize that, and as such, they still regard and as the HMS Defender attempted to do was go into those territorial waters, saying that they really are Ukrainian territorial waters, and that's when the tensions really mounted up. And I think you're going to see continued provocations like this. Now, there's a Sea Breeze 2021 that's underway right now for 2 weeks, began today. It is a NATO exercise using Ukraine. Perhaps elements of Georgia. So the tensions are going to remain there. One positive thing, I guess, from the Russian standpoint is that they can see how the military exercises are being conducted in order to really understand the tactics that are being used. But that's one of the downsides of conducting such military exercises, that the other side can see how you're doing it all. So that can work both ways. It's a double-edged sword, in effect.
That's true. Good point. The Royal Navy also knew full well where Russia...
That's it. With this clip, you get the point. But just remember, when you watch all this news talking about possible conflicts between NATO and Russia over Ukraine or in Eastern Europe, or talks of conflicts between the U.S. and China in the Pacific Ocean, just remember that the main conflict, World War III, that battle in the Valley of Jehoshaphat, is going to take place in that Middle Eastern region. And while America's allies will be on her side at the beginning of World War III, eventually they're going to turn against her and ally themselves with Russia and her allies to again shoot those 200 million nuclear missiles onto the United States of America. You're going to get the 100% truth of what's going on from the true men of the Lord, the prophets of the Most High, chiefly through GMS or Great Millstone, going out onto the highways and byways preaching this word, as well as putting up video epistles like this, being the spiritual watchmen, the spiritual newscasters, perfectly breaking down the scriptures and showing you the game plan before the play actually happens. Now let's get back into Jeremiah chapter 50. I'm going to jump down to verse 12. And remember, the main part of that clip from RT America was dealing with a small spat between Britain's Navy and Russia's Navy in the Black Sea. But as we'll read in verse 12, your mother shall be sore confounded, she that bare you shall be ashamed. And this is speaking of the mother of Babylon the Great, the United States of America, which was Britain. And as it said, your mother shall be sore confounded, she that bare you shall be ashamed. So though that clip made it seem that there's an animosity between Britain and Russia, eventually, just like all of America's other allies, America's top ally, Britain, is going to turn against her and ally themselves with Russia to shoot her nuclear missiles onto the United States of America. Behold, the hindermost of the nations shall be a wilderness, a dry land, and a desert. The hindermost of the nations, the far side of the earth. What was the United States known as when those European colonizers came over here? It was known as the New World, the ends of the earth. And as it says, it shall be a wilderness, a dry land, and a desert. After those 200 million nuclear missiles hit the United States of America, it's going to be turned into a desolate, uninhabitable wasteland. Verse 13, because of the wrath of Yahweh, it shall not be inhabited, but it shall be wholly desolate. Everyone that goeth by Babylon shall be astonished and hiss at all her plagues. Put yourselves in array against Babylon round about, all ye that bend the bow, shoot at her, spare no arrows. When these nations go to shoot their nuclear missiles, they're going to empty out their silos and show no mercy on Babylon the Great, the United States of America. For she hath sinned against Yahweh. The United States of America was the main place of torment and hardships for the children of Israel, who are the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. You Edomites in America touch the apple of the Most High's eye, so you're going to get the most severe judgment during this upcoming World War III. But now I'm going to jump down to Jeremiah chapter 50, verse 41. Behold, a people shall come from the north, that north country, Russia, Gog, the Medes, and a great nation. And many kings shall be raised up from the coasts of the earth, that assembly of great nations unto the north country, Russia. Not only Russia's allies like China, Iran, and North Korea, but America's allies like Britain, her mother, France, Germany, and these other nations. They shall hold the bow and the lance. Also referring to those nuclear missiles, they are cruel and will not shew mercy. They won't spare their arrows. Their voice shall roar like the sea, and they shall ride upon horses. Every one put in array like a man to battle against thee, O daughter of Babylon. Now I'm going to jump up to verse 40. As the Most High overthrew Sodom and Gomorrah and the neighbor cities thereof, saith Yahweh, so shall no man abide there, neither shall any son of man dwell therein. And besides being known as Babylon the Great in the scriptures, the United States of America is again known as spiritual Sodom and Egypt, as pursuant to Revelation 11 verse 8. And how did the Most High overthrow ancient Sodom and Gomorrah? With fire and brimstone from the sky. And he's going to overthrow this modern day Sodom and Gomorrah with modern fire and brimstone from the sky. Those 200 million nuclear missiles. And as it says, so shall no man abide therein, neither shall any son of man dwell therein. When those missiles hit the United States of America, it's going to be turned into the biblical lake of fire from sea to shining sea, and then a desolate, uninhabitable wasteland where man, woman, or child will never set foot on again. And after a while, only desert creatures will dwell here, as it says up in verse 39. Therefore, the wild beasts of the desert with the wild beasts of the islands shall dwell there, and the owls shall dwell therein, and it shall be no more inhabited forever, neither shall it be dwelt in from generation to generation. In the United States of America, Babylon the Great is going to stand as an eternal memorial as to what a wicked kingdom looked like, how not to govern the earth, and what the judgment and punishment was for touching the apple of the Most High's eye, the children of Israel, who were again the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. So that's it with this video. And with this video, I hope you sincere Akim were edified. Just keep strong and keep pushing this word. We're almost out of this final wicked captivity of the heathen nations, chiefly of the Edomites. And as always, I'm going to say Abad Babal, Kwam Yasharala, and until next time, Shalom.